Hello, and welcome to the Brave New Weed podcast. And now, here's your host, Joe Duerson.
Welcome to the Brave New Weed podcast, the high-minded conversation for the post-Prohibition era. I'm here with Matthew Hendershot, my co-host.
How's it going, Joe?
I'm happy to be here with you, my friend.
I'm happy to be here as well. Still a little under the weather, but I'm on the mend. I'm gonna get well.
Good. Hurry up and get well. Before we start, I want to thank our two newest Patreon supporters by name, C. Lee Navarro and Michelle Simon. They came on last week and are helping to keep our podcast going by contributing.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, they came on at a nice high level, so we want to personally thank the both of them, and we look forward to communicating with you guys out there. Of course, above the $20 a month level, you get to come and join us as a recording
in our beautiful studios in Bushwick or Manhattan.
Yeah.
What else do they get?
They get a copy of your book.
Lucky them.
Signed copy of the book, special shout outs on the episode, and a lot of other fun stuff too. All of the reward levels that we do offer our patrons are available on patreon.com/bravenewweed. And I know I appreciate it if anyone comes on to support. So.
I'm thrilled. So that's it for our self congratulatory promotion.
Yeah, thank you both for coming on as patrons.
Really appreciate it. Let's do some news, Matthew.
I like it. Let's go to the news.
So, ole, looks like Mexico has just made medical cannabis available to its citizens.
That's right. We talked about this a couple episodes back. The lower house of Congress had approved it after their version of the Senate had already approved it. But the big news is, of course, President Enrique Peña Nieto stating by presidential decree that Mexico has legalized cannabis for medicinal use. And now he's actually taken the fight out. He used to be very vehemently opposed to legal cannabis, but has now stated that globally we need to re-examine the drug policy and how countries all over the world address marijuana and medical marijuana.
The irony of this, of course, is that in countries like Mexico, cannabis has always been used medically.
Sure.
It's been a plant that people have used for every illness because it's available and it works on so many illnesses. So it's great that the government has finally realized what the people have known almost forever.
Well, and it's just more evidence, I believe, of the winds of change. You know, now you got Canada to the north, Mexico to the south, both with working towards completely legal marijuana programs. Especially in the world of medical, and I think it's silly now we're in North America and the United States is playing catch up.
We'll figure it out slowly. What else is happening this week?
Well, speaking of the whole medical marijuana and access to in the United States, a bipartisan committee inside the U.S. Senate has reintroduced the CARERS Act, which is the Compassionate Access, Research, Expansion, and Respect States Act of 2017. These are Republicans and Democrats, including Rand Paul, Cory Booker, Kirsten Gillibrand, Mike Lee, Lisa Murkowski, Al Franken signed on to this as a co-supporter. A lot of heavy hitters in the Senate who are saying we should respect states' rights, and in states that have legalized medical marijuana, the federal government should stay out.
This is the only thing that any Republican and any Democrat can agree on, which is good news.
Well, I think it's important. It speaks to the Republican ideals of personal liberty and honestly, all the sort of economic and capitalistic approaches that the current neoconservative Republicans tend to love. I mean, there's money to be made. That should be enough to get you guys on board. But yeah, taking care of people, letting patients have access to their medicine, better medicine than the opioids that are currently killing people right and left all over this country. I think it's a long time coming, and I think that anyone who lives in states like Kentucky or Utah, New York, New Jersey, they need to get on the phone and talk with these people and put your support behind these state senators.
They need to do it. I did it yesterday. I called the governor of New York State, where we live, and said, come on, man, sign the PTSD law. It's unbelievable. So the state assembly of the most backward state in terms of cannabis, which is New York, one of the most backward states, has finally said PTSD is a condition that cannabis works for. Again, lawmakers are finally catching up with reality. We've known this for over 50 years, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's the New York law was so convoluted and narrow to begin with, and then to have to work so hard to get people suffering PTSD, America's veterans that need access to medical treatment via marijuana. It's just silly that it had to be so many hoops to jump through just to get that included into the bill.
You know, I know. Actually, we're going to get this guy on the show. Al Byrne is the founder of the Veterans for Medical Cannabis Access Program. He's been doing this he's a Vietnam vet. He's been doing this for 30 years. I think we should get him on the show to talk about vets, PTS. He doesn't call it PTSD. He doesn't think it's a disease. He thinks it's just a syndrome, and I think he's right about that. And he talks about trauma being, you don't have to be a vet to have trauma, right? You can. Yeah. So many people suffer from trauma.
Families.
And cannabis is, I have seen this with my own eyes. People who haven't slept for years, haven't had a good night's sleep. They use cannabis, they can sleep. It helps them actually forget the trauma. It helps to unwind some of those memories. So I think we should definitely get him on.
I'm all for it.
Okay, we'll do that in a couple of weeks. Stay tuned, folks.
Things, you're well informed about the study that is beginning in the state of Arizona.
Sioux Cicely study, yeah. Yeah.
I don't know if you saw this. We put it out on the Twitter. Listeners, go to the Twitter and take a look. There was a photograph that came out of the marijuana that was provided to them by the federal government.
The stuff that's grown at the University of Mississippi, right?
Yeah, that's right. This stuff. Oh, man. You guys got to go to the Twitter and see this photograph.
It's embarrassing. It's like you want to put it on a Pink Floyd album cover in 1970 and pull the twigs and the seeds out of it, right?
I'm pretty sure if you could afford a Pink Floyd album, you could afford better weed than this stuff.
It is embarrassing, really. It is embarrassing.
All right, I got to do one thing. I got a bone to pick. And this kind of loops back to what we were talking about.
Just pick your bone, Matthew.
Earlier.
Just pick your bone.
With the CARES Act. And I'm going to call out GQ magazine here. I also got on Twitter and I did a little ranting and raving. But in response to the CARES Act, this piece of news coming out, GQ magazine did write an article about it. But to promote the article on Instagram and on Twitter, they used a photoshopped image that they created of Senators Al Franken and Rand Paul. And what they had done was they photoshopped like weed sunglasses onto them, and they found like pictures that could be construed that maybe they're like Al Franken smiling really big.
This is just not the post-prohibition moment.
And they put him in front of some shitty sign for a crap weed dispensary.
You know, they're still in the high times mentality. They think this is what's funny and what's cool, and they really got to grow up a little, don't they?
Well, I honestly think shame on you, GQ. You should. I mean, these are United States senators. These are people who are working to allow patients to get access to their medicine, and you are buffooning them in public. And I think it's inappropriate. I think it goes against what the cannabis culture at large needs to put forward in an effort to legitimize and normalize access to this plant.
So did you call GQ and complain?
I don't know how to call them, but I definitely roasted them on Twitter, and I encourage everyone else to as well.
Good.
And not just GQ, it's easy to pick on them because they stepped in it, but honestly, anyone that you see that is out there that just is lampooning this plant, I think we need to take them to task. And if we don't stand up and say, hey, that, makes us look bad, that perpetuates a stereotype, that perpetuates the culture.
I'm with you, man.
Of prohibition. I think we got to stand up to them.
I'm with you. Absolutely. Thank you for that. Let's move to our show tonight, okay?
Yeah, I think we got a great one.
We do. We have Marvin Washington. Marvin is, well, first of all, he's 6'6" and 290 pounds.
He
really stands out in a room, okay? He is a former Denver Bronco, New York Jets, San Francisco 49er, football mega hero. He played for 11 years, and now he is really devoting his time and energy to helping players get access to cannabis, because the big issue they suffer is traumatic brain injury. These guys are getting smashed on the head 1,000,000 times a day.
Oh, yeah.
And they know that if they sit it out, if they complain about having headaches, going blind, all the other problems that happen when your head gets bashed consistently, they're going to lose their careers.
Well, yeah. And I mean, that there's an issue because it's in the news that the NFL has settled with a bunch of former players to the tune of millions of dollars in compensation for this. But it's kind of a slightly toxic environment where these guys are going out there.
Slightly. I think it sounds like a deadly environment. I mean, you get traumatic brain injury. There's reports of guys who are like tasering themselves to stop the pain. They're losing their minds completely. They're, putting things in ovens that burn houses down. Their minds go to mush. So this is a huge issue. And, the NFL, they're trying to do things like design a new helmet to stop it. And that's not what's going to help. And in fact, the Israelis have done a lot of research on traumatic brain injury, and they have shown preliminarily, but have shown a lot of ability to stop this before it becomes toxic, stop the response by using cannabis into the bloodstream. So that's a really interesting bit of research, and Marvin knows a lot, and he's really smart about it. So let's talk to him sooner than later.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us today. We're here with Marvin Washington, football player, New York Jets, 49ers, and Broncos, who's now a cannabis advocate. And you run what group?
I'm involved with 5 different cannabis companies to where I'm either co-owner or major stockholder. And if there's a group, it's called Athletes for Care. And we're advocating for cannabis to be used in professional sports as an alternative to the opiates and pharmaceuticals that the team doctors and trainers are poisoning the players with.
So you have a huge uphill battle that you're facing every day with this, do you not?
Well, when I got into the space 4 years ago, it was a matter of if, and now it's a matter of when. I believe that over the past 4 years, through guys like me, the Players Association, because anytime there's a safety issue in any industry, it's always the union that initiates the changes. And I've been talking to the union for 4 years, and other guys have too, and they've moved the level where players can test positive at 2 years ago, and now you're starting to see the head of the NFLPA, DeMaurice Smith, talking and saying that getting cannabis in is a priority to them, and
You're
it's
kidding.
a personal health issue. Yes.
Wow.
So it's going to happen.
Wow. You've seen a lot of brain injury or brain trauma in your days as a player, correct?
Of course.
So what was some of the most difficult things you've witnessed? What were some of the most tragic outcomes you've seen? Because I have read about terrible things.
Well, the things that it's just a concussion, a closed head injury, and I've seen guys knocked out on the field. I've seen guys snoring on the field, but it's the mood and behavior issues that come after that.
That's what I mean. What happens? Tell us what happens.
Your equilibrium's off, short-term memory, nausea, can't focus, your vision is off, all these types of things that come from the closed head injuries. And some guys, it'll take a week or two to come back, and some guys never come back. It's something, everybody's different.
Yeah, I mean, I know people who've had it as a younger man, and as they've grown older, they really lose their minds completely. They lose all sense of self. They lose sense of who their wives are, their families. It's really, it's like senility at a very young age. Like Alzheimer is almost in your 40s.
Of course, but you're talking about the closed head injury, and this is something that scientists have, been knowing about since the 20s, because it was called pugilistic dementia then with boxers or punch drunk. And so whether it's pugilistic dementia, TBI, or
traumatic brain injury,
or concussion, which leads to CTE, which is chronic traumatic encephalopathy. But you see all the mood and behavior issues, they're all the same. Whether you have TBI, pugilistic dementia, or CTE, it's lack of impulse control, depression, anger, all the way up to suicide. The Department of Defense with their young men and their soldiers, they're dealing with it. 22 ex-soldiers a day commit suicide. We've had none in the past 2 years, but before that, we've lost maybe, I think it's 23 football players that have committed suicide, and each and every one of them, when they studied their brain post-mortem, they all had CTE.
Have you had one of these illnesses? Have you suffered from this?
I certainly hope not. It's
Good.
diagnosed post-mortem, but we'll see. As I told a buddy a couple of years ago when we were talking about this, it's like I believe all of us, when it's all said and done, we're going to have something, because it comes from repeated hits in the head. And everybody talks about the major concussions, but I played on the defensive line, so I was hitting my head every play.
I was wondering about
that. Those are called subconcussions, and those are things that guys are smarter about today. But back in my day, you kind of shook them off, and guys kind of shake them off today too, because if you don't play, then there's a possibility that you're going to get replaced. And the best ability that you have as a professional athlete is availability.
Yeah.
You have to be there.
So did you ever tally or estimate the number of sub-concussions you suffered or endured in your 10 years in pro ball?
Oh, no, thousands.
Thousands.
I would say it has to be, because I shook it off, and I was hitting my head every play. So every time I got dizzy or saw, the white spots or whatever, I shook it off because I had to play. Football is a game of violence and toughness. Mm-hmm. And so
the fans love it.
Exactly. But I wasn't going to come out, just because I had a dinghy. I had to play.
Yeah. So are you a cannabis user?
CBD. And with some THC, because I have to open up my endocannabinoid system.
Of course.
So I'm I vape with the pen that's 80% CBD, 20% THC.
1 to 5
that works
ratio.
well for me, because the THC doesn't work well for me, because it makes me anxious and paranoid and all that. Mm-hmm. But I am a fan of the cannabis plant, full spectrum, THC, THCA, THCV, CBN, CBT, and all that.
And how long have you been using CBD?
I've been using CBD for the last 4 years.
What are the current standards in the NFL in regards to, you said that they moved the line for testing positive. What are the current standards?
0.35 nanograms, which moved it up from it came up from zero. No, it's 0.35. It moved up from 0.15, but it's something. It's still low, because WADA, the World Anti-Doping Association, is 1.50 to test positive. So basically, you would have to be smoking while you're running to test positive during an Olympic sport.
Yeah.
But this is going to happen, man. It's just, I say that the ceiling is 2020, when the NFL's collective bargaining agreement is up. The players are going to have to give up something, but I think they're going to put in, have a less prohibitive marijuana policy, or it could happen as soon as next year.
So give us a little insight behind the teams. Like, how many players are pro cannabis? Is it majority? Is it minority? Where's it going here? Where do we feel?
I would say majority. Players are smarter than they were when I played, and when I played, I would probably say 60% of the guys were cannabis users. And they were doing it for a number of reasons, mostly to relieve the stress of the game. But right now, I would say it's probably even 60 or 70%, because guys are smarter. My son played at a major Division I football program. A lot of guys went to the NFL. I was a financial advisor for a lot of years, and I represented a lot of players. So I kind of stayed connected to the game in that way. But I know guys, instead of smoking, they have cannabis cooks. One of the best cannabis cooks in the country is Scott Durrell out in Denver, Colorado. And I know he personally cooks for a lot of the Broncos. But a lot of guys are vaping and taking edibles, transdermal patches, instead of taking the anti-inflammatories that you have to do to get through the week, the Anderson and your naproxens, or your Percocets and your Tylenol threes or what have you. I can give you a whole script of what it takes to get through the week. But guys are using cannabis as an alternative, which, is non-toxic, non-addictive, because concussions are a huge problem in the NFL, but a bigger problem is the ex-players, 20,000 ex-players. They're 4 times as more likely to abuse opiates than the general society. And we know the general society, that's eating at the...
They have a problem already, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
4 times as high.
So,
yeah.
In that same regard, we talk, moving the goal line for the limit. Why does the limit even exist in the first place? What ground does the NFL Owners Association or in the business itself, why have they decided that if you smoke pot you can't play?
Well, I think that comes down to it being a Schedule I drug, and this is something that came about in the NFL from the 70s. I think that's when they first started testing for drugs, because you had the counterculture revolution that was ending, and guys in their 20s and early 30s, they're part of society, so a lot of guys were smoking, and that gave them an excuse, and plus it's corporate America, and so they have to, they're trying to set an example and look out for the kids, but they still take billions and millions of dollars from Budweiser.
Well, that's
Yeah,
that's
alcohol,
another
right?
that's another reason I think they're not pro
what
cannabis.
have you.
Yeah.
And so I think the NFL they're still falling back that it's a Schedule I drug.
It's a double standard, but yes, you're correct, I think.
Of course.
What about this? Can you talk about Gisele's recent revelation about Tom Brady's secret concussions?
That happens all the time because guys want to play. And I said the best ability that a player has is availability. You want to be accountable to your teammates. And so you're going to hide your injuries. And unfortunately, a lot of guys hide their head injuries because they know they're replaceable. Now, Tom Brady's not replaceable, but if he doesn't play, the Patriots have less chance of winning and going to the Super Bowl and winning Super Bowls. So he's playing. And guys think it's toughness, but we don't know what's going to happen to a 50-year-old Tom Brady or 55-year-old Tom Brady. You know, that's what you're doing. You're playing with your future.
I mean, is it toughness or is it just willful dumbness?
Well, I mean, that's your paycheck, right? You got to show
It's
up
your
and
paycheck.
How many
play.
paychecks more does Tom Brady need to get through life? Tom Brady's pretty well set, okay?
I mean, it's Gisele. Maybe she's got expensive tastes.
she makes
She
her
makes
own.
more- she makes more money
She makes a
than
lot
Tom.
more money than he does. Exactly.
No, I think it's toughness and accountability to your teammates, and so she sees it. But there are probably a lot of players like that. I know for a fact there are a lot of players like that. I've played when I played through having a concussion.
Yeah,
You know?
I read the article.
And that's the way it was, and a lot of guys are still doing it because you're accountable to your teammates, and you want to play. NFL players they don't have guaranteed contracts, and so we're commodities that can be replaced. And if you're a guy that's at the bottom of the roster, scraping by, just trying to make the team and hang on, you're going to hide a lot of injuries, including the concussion, unfortunately.
So your son, you said, is he going to play pro ball?
He played at LSU, graduated in 3.5 years, played a couple years in the CFL, and now he's getting his master's, which I'm totally fine with.
That was my question. I mean, would you encourage a young person today, even with great talent, to play pro ball, knowing what you know?
Not playing pro ball. Let's go back to Pop Warner, and junior high and high school. If I had a son today and a coach told me they wanted him to play football,
Yeah.
I would say, can you guarantee that he's not going to leave this game with a disease? Can you guarantee that he's going to be able to function when he's 40 and 50 years old? If they can't do that, then I'm not going to let my son play. And right now, we're not there. There is no helmet that's going to stop a concussion.
There is no helmet.
There's no piece of equipment that's going to stop a
There is
concussion.
no piece of
I believe that this issue is going to be solved through science, and the government has that patent that says, patent 6630507, that says Cannabis now, CBD, is an antioxidant and neuroprotectant for the brain in relationship to concussions. But the science is there. You've been to Israel, Dr. Mushulam. You know the science about CBD and concussions. And if this thing gets rescheduled, I would love for, the billions of dollars of big tobacco, big pharma to come in here and do R&D on it, and we'll see.
I always wonder about this, and I've asked the Israeli scientists, why don't you petition the NFL for dollars? Because in Israel, you can research this stuff. They're the ones who've done all the research on traumatic brain injury.
Of course.
Can you not establish a conduit to help these researchers? I mean, I can introduce you to the woman who's the lead researcher in this world to get some money out of this league, because here you have a possible solution. We don't know definitively if it's going to work, but the preliminary evidence was pretty strong.
Oh, it's pretty strong, but we've been hearing about that, and I would love for an introduction, a warm introduction, because I'm going over there next year for their Canatech cannabis conference that they have, and I would love any introductions that you can give me, because I can bring that back, and be it the NFL or the NFLPA or the Harvard study. The NFLPA gave the Harvard study $100 million to study the the health and well-being of former players. I've written a paper for that, and I'm trying to get one of the indications that they study when they open it up. I want it to be cannabis. I want it to be cannabis as a neuroprotectant and anti-inflammatory, because I think if that's in the NFL's wheelhouse, because it's body and mind. Most of the injuries come from players, having inflammation in their bodies. If we can cut that down, you're going to have a healthier player.
So the Israelis found that if you administer CBD/THC within 4 hours after concussion or head injury, that you can stop the toxic response in the brain, right? Do people in the NFL understand this research and that it exists, and do they know about it?
I believe they do, but I don't know if they want to pursue it. And that's the thing with me. Like the NFL has this concussion protocol and what have you, but it's at the point of contact when you get a concussion, it's the same thing when I played over 20 years ago. It's you go into the dark room and you wait for the symptoms to subside.
That's it?
That's it.
No ice?
That's how are you going to put ice in your brain?
I don't know. You just go into a dark room?
Have you ever had a concussion, Joe?
Exactly.
No.
Yeah.
So I would like to see at the point of contact player gets a concussion, that he gets a massive amount of THC and CBD.
Well, and
so that right there will get the player back on the field sooner if I'm on the owner side, because we need our players back. We need healthy players. And it would mitigate some of the symptoms, short term and long term. It's just natural, and I believe it's going to happen in the very near future. It has to, because I have a line of CBD products out, and I want to get them in the youth leagues. And I'm not saying it's dosable or whatever, but it's microdosing every day, where you're drinking my water, where you're taking my tincture, where you're taking my drop. And so now you're protecting the brain, and you're cutting down on inflammation in the body.
What's your line called, Marvin?
It's ISO Sports. It's a joint venture with Isodal. They're a CBD company. They're sourced their CBD out of Switzerland. It's hemp-based, so we can sell it in all 50 states.
Yeah.
And I debuted it at the NBA All-Star Game. And I've been to a few events, and we're selling online, but we're going to get a distribution line probably in the fall.
Good.
Thank you.
Good.
I got to get you some of my product.
Yeah,
yes. I use CBD for joint pain.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Me too. It's oil for the Tin Man for me.
It's what?
Oil
for the Tin Man.
Yeah.
I gotcha.
How tall are you?
6'6".
How much do you weigh?
More than I want to, but I'm probably weighing about 290 right now.
Do you really?
Uh-huh.
Wow.
Yeah.
There's a lot of you.
Yeah, it is. It helped me play football for 11 years.
I bet. I know.
Yeah.
So what are some of the cutting edge traumatic brain injury therapies you're seeing, other than the one we talked about where they're administering it into the bloodstream and it's stopping the concussion?
I think that one is probably the most cutting edge that I've heard about, because there are a lot of guys out there and a lot of doctors that are giving these guys, like I would call it snake oil, untested theories, and they're putting these guys through as guinea pigs. And none of them are scientifically proven. And so I kind of stay away from it. But I do know that Dr. Bob Stern and Chris Nowinski at Boston University and Dr. Bennett Amalu, they are trying to make the direct correlation between concussions and CTE. Once they do that, then the NFL will have no choice but to recognize it, because we had I think it was a $1 billion concussion settlement, but CTE has been written out of a concussion settlement, and that made no sense to me. And that's why I was so upset about this concussion settlement, because it's like, being a coal miner, they get a settlement and you take out black lung disease. It made no sense. And so the NFL took out CTE, and it can never be written in. But that doesn't faze me, because I believe if the NFL wants to grow their game and be the number one sport in the country and in the world, the number one sports league, they're going to have to do something about this head problem, this closed head injury problem. Because in the 50s, the top three sports were horse racing, baseball, and boxing. Horse racing and boxing are events now. Baseball is doing fine. They have an issue of pace of their game or whatever, but the NFL has a safety issue. They're going to have to get their hands around this, because since 2010, youth football is down. Since 2010, youth football, high school football is down 4% in the state of Texas. And in Texas, they say there's two sports. There's football and there's spring football. And so that tells you something. If parents are getting the information, they're seeing these guys up to killing themselves and having all these issues, that's not good for the league. That's not good for football.
What's your organization called again?
Well, the organization that I'm part of, that's a collective of athletes from all 4 major leagues, and we even have Floyd Landis and a couple of alternative sports guys called Athletes for Care AFC. And we started out with maybe 20 guys. Now we have close to 200 guys, and we're pushing and getting the information back out. And I appreciate you letting me come on and spread the word.
Well, you're going to help us spread the word too, because we're going to send this to you, and then you'll spread it to your people as well.
Of course.
So this seems like something that fans of the game should also be able to get involved in, and because if you love football, you want to be able to see the game thrive and to see your favorite players play. How can just general members of the populace get in touch with you, get in touch with your organization, and throw some support behind you guys?
They can just go to the website Athletes for Care. I believe it's .net, and there's a ton of information on there that they can get involved and come out and support us and make donations, what have you, because there's strength in numbers, and we're trying to change policy. So if we get to the point where we get enough guys, we're going to change policy, not only in the major leagues, but I believe at the state and national level, because athletes bring a lot of attention to any issue that they get behind.
That's great. Good. I wish you luck.
Thank you.
You're going to need it. This is not the easiest battle you're going to fight.
Listen, we're all going to need it, because I believe we have an upcoming fight coming up, everybody in this space, because, with the current administration and the AG that we have, we all need to be together and fighting together. So we need all the help that we can get, because, I don't know how they're going to distinguish between recreation and medical, but I think they're going to try to come down and stop the momentum that is happening. So we all need to come together and fight.
You and I agree. We're the Debbie Downers of the world here.
I'm the dissenting
He
voice.
thinks it's all going to be nice and pretty and easy and simple and rosy.
Not all that. I think that paints an unfair situation on it. But I do see a path forward that sets our Department of Justice separating it off to the side and focusing.
What is that?
Just the way of, right now we don't know what this commission, whatever Cook's getting into and doing all his research on trying to stop crime and everything like that. But I can foresee potentially a place where they move the scheduling of marijuana and say, look, we're going to let the Cole Memorandum and this sort of passive stance on marijuana and cannabis stand, and we're going to focus where we need to focus, which is drug trafficking, opioids, and counterterrorism.
Well, when you have Jeff Sessions that saying marijuana is on the same level as heroin, that's a tough road to hoe.
I think that's a tough one.
And he's trying to ramp up the war on drugs 2.0 and going back to, that Just Say No, Ronald Reagan, tough on crime, and Bill Clinton,
lock them up. Lock them up.
Yeah.
Prison. I just say we're going to have a fight ahead.
I agree that there is a fight, especially in the larger space. We need to tackle the opioid problem as a public health issue, not as a crime issue. These are the fights that I really see going. But I don't know. I just see on the legal marijuana front, on states that have legalized it, it seems like anytime he comes out and says, it's just as bad as heroin, there's somebody else inside the Department of Justice or somebody, the governor of Colorado steps up and says, well, yeah, but in pot, not in our state, you're not going to bring that here. So I think we got a lot of allies out there in the world, and I think he's got a tough battle convincing them his way is right, in just so much as we have.
I just say states' rights.
I agree.
Conservatives and Republicans are always talking about states' rights, particularly when it comes to like women's reproduction issues. But right here, they want to come in and intrude. I think they need to leave it to the states, because anytime they put it to the people have passed it. And I just, that they should fall back on states' right and let it go from there.
Agree.
Thank you, Marvin.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Marvin, thanks again. That was a great interview. So we're going to go from a very serious issue this episode to a slightly less serious issue next episode. We have Warren Bobrow, who is the Cannabis Cocktail Whisperer.
Yeah.
What's he do, Matt?
So this, normally we talked to Ron Silver before, and those were like mocktail type approaches. And he does some of that too, but his big thing is high-end all bespoke,
as it were.
liquor-based cannabis cocktails. Actual, like, mixing alcohol and cannabis in these high-end cocktails.
Now, we have tasted some of these, and they happen to be mighty good
It was very good.
and mighty powerful.
That also.
So he's interesting in what he's doing, and we also have a copy of his book to give away, right?
We do, yeah. So this will be our first time to activate a Patreon giveaway. So we're going to pick one lucky patron at random, and we're going to give away an autographed copy of his book.
So here you go, listeners. Though, for $1 a month, you can get his book that retails for $25 if you become a supporter of ours. There you go. What more do I need to say?
Yeah.
It's $1 a month.
It's a pretty cool book too. There's all
Yeah, it's
sorts
good.
of recipes in there, alcohol included. Without alcohol, there's even some stuff in there about how to decarboxylize your own weed. If you
No,
want
I
to
thought
make
that was useful.
infusions.
He's got some great tips, I have to say. He knows a lot.
So it's cool. We're looking forward to that.
Join us for the next episode, folks. Thanks again for listening.
Thanks for listening to the Brave New Weed podcast. This episode and all future episodes are made possible by amazing listeners like yourself. If you like what you've heard, we encourage you to show your support by giving $1 a month for special access and rewards on patreon.com/bravenewweed. You can also follow us on Twitter and Instagram via @bravenewweed. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/bravenewweed. And remember, you can always find more information about us or information discussed in each episode by pointing your favorite browser to bravenewweed.com.